So now let's take a look at the larger tectonic setting with Dr. Grace Shephard from the University of Oslo. Grace?
Yes, hello everyone, and thanks again to the organizers and to AGU for this very exciting webinar. So yes, my name is Grace, and I was asked to talk about Iceland in its sort of zoomed out, bigger picture setting. So I'll talk about some of the tectonics and the geodynamics of this region. And when I introduce this sort of scale change, just to remind you that it's part of the global system, whether we're looking at Iceland, a plate, or the world itself. And there's sort of two ways that we can start to approach this topic. First is through considering it through a vast spatial scale. So whether we're looking at an individual eruption or even smaller scales than this, through to the regional setting, up to its global setting. And of course, this is just the surface. There's a lot of things happening beneath our feet. So we can peel back the Earth. Here's just a snapshot of what it looks like at 200 kilometers depth. And indeed take a slice sort of through the Earth from the surface down to the core. So spatial aspects are one thing. And the second element is time, specifically deep time. So the rest of the speakers, I think, will talk a lot about present day and sort of daily time scale processes and even into the future. But what I wanted to do, at least for these 9 minutes, is to take us on a journey back. So we can look at present day, of course. We can say, let's go back to 50 million years ago, to 100 million years ago, 200. So here's just an animation going back in time showing the motion of the tectonic plates. And just so we're on the same page, MA means millions of years ago. So yeah, already you can start to see that I'll talk a bit about Iceland, but also Iceland in its bigger global setting. And Iceland is unique for many, many reasons. But from this perspective, it's got two really great things happening. First of all, it's located on a plate boundary. And second of all, it's got a mantle plume underneath it. So when we're talking about the plate boundary, what we're referring to is the divergence between the North American plate and the Eurasian plate. And so the plate boundary is generally designated as this region here. And in the Atlantic, what we've got is a mid-ocean ridge, which is spreading apart and creating seafloor along this boundary. Secondly, we've got a mantle plume. So this is a hot thermal, likely thermochemical anomaly rising from the Earth's interior. And so Iceland is unique because it's got these two processes happening in the same place. So here we can see the plate boundary on the surface and the mantle plume in the mantle deep below it. And if we continue this journey of rewinding to a time before even Iceland existed, but I hope this will give some context as to why it exists, the processes happening, and what even might happen in the future. So first we'll focus on the opening of the North Atlantic, so the plate tectonic side of the story. So you can see Iceland in this figure and the plate boundary, which runs from the Arctic down towards the Central Atlantic here in yellow. To the north and the south of Iceland, we have the Kolbeinsey and the Reykjanes mid-ocean ridges respectively. And it's worth just noting that there's also an extinct ridge, which means that there's no active seafloor spreading happening today, but it did in the past. That's the Argyll ridge. So this is present day, but we actually know that the ocean floor within the Atlantic was created around about 56 million years ago. And we can look at lots of different geological and geophysical data sets, but one of the primary ones that we look at is magnetics and magnetic anomalies. So this is what's shown in the background here. And what we can do is make these what's called magnetic picks related to these magnetic anomalies and assign them to a time. When we have enough of them, what we can do is draw lines, which are called isochrons, and they link up seafloor at the same age. And so this is a map of the age of the seafloor for the North Atlantic. And you'll see in the center of the Atlantic, it's very young, new ocean seafloor, and towards the continental margins, it's a lot older. It's got these darker colors. So I'll just simplify that figure. Everything that's an oceanic rock is in gray with the isochrons on the top, plate boundaries in black, and you can see the topography at present day just for reference. And the remaining yellowish colors are the continental, submerged continental rocks that are today submerged. So we'll go forward in time. Again, this is at present day. Take a step back to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60 million years ago. And you can see at this point, Greenland was snug up next to the Norwegian margin, and none of the North Atlantic actually existed. And I'll just show this animation, which will run backwards in time and then forwards in time. So we'll see this opening and closure, apparent closure of this ocean. But I just wanted to say that the story continues before 60 million years ago, and it was actually a period of long-lived, over hundreds of millions of years, rifting between Greenland and the Norwegian margin. So as Freystein said, the rate of motion that's occurring across this boundary is about 2 centimeters per year. So that's about what our fingernails grow out. And for the North Atlantic, this is in the regime of what's called ultra slow to slow. So there are other ocean basins that are moving a lot faster than the North Atlantic. So it's been roughly 2 centimeters per year throughout its history, but there have been some deviations on million years sort of timescales, which you can see along the bottom. If we zoom a little bit back into Iceland, in the figure on the right, we can see the Kolbeinsey Ridge coming in from the north, the Reykjanes Ridge in from the south, and then we have different zones of rifting. So there's been an overall shift with time from the west towards the east. So for example, there was a jump in the rift zone from here to here at about 15, from here to here at 7, and from here to here at 2 million years ago. But it's quite a diffuse boundary, and there's volcanism and deformation and extension happening in various places, of course, with the recent eruptions back down here. And this is just a sort of a vertical slice through that area that I was showing, where you can see the lithosphere, so the outer shell of the Earth. We've got the domain of the Western Rift Zone, the Eastern Rift Zone, and this potential mantle plume. So you can see I'm starting to add this plume story back into it. So about this plume. So when it arrived, it's thought to have been around 60, 62 million years ago. And this is occurred at many places across the Earth. And this is often, the eruptive products are called large igneous provinces. So the one in the Atlantic, or the North Atlantic, is called the North Atlantic Igneous Province. And this has covered a wide range of locations, east and west Greenland, around Iceland, and even towards the Scotland margin. And so this is the area here shown in the darker orange. When it erupted, it was 60 million years ago. So if I shuffle the plates back again, this is the eruptive sort of dispersal area. And the plume has been hypothesized to have a diameter, a head, with this arriving plume head was about 2,500 kilometers. So quite a big scale feature. And this has had a number of impacts, including regional uplift and changes, for example, in sedimentary depositional patterns. A brief comment on the mantle plume. Iceland, it's typically thought to have been sourced from the deepest mantle, so at the core mantle boundary. So this is a slice through seismic tomography, and the next speaker will talk about this. But it's basically a method using earthquake data to look at different domains of the mantle. And we have this red area and these bluer areas. And these red areas on the core are thought to be the source of many mantle plumes. And you can see Iceland is this one located up here, and it's on the edge of this big, slow domain that exists under the African area. This is a vertical slice that we've seen just before through the Iceland plume. So this is one particular model out of Oxford, and you can see the plume conduit snaking its way back down to the core. This plume is also inferred from gravity data sets, but the seismic tomography is one of the best ways we have of imaging this plume and can be used complementary with, for example, geochemistry. Just wanted to say that Iceland is, again, taking first place in some things as well, and this is in the plume flux. So this is plume flux against helium-3, helium-4 ratios, and basically this is to say it is the highest output of all the mantle plumes. So here's the Afar plume and here's Hawaii. And this isn't just a static value, it does change through time And this variable supply of the magma plume stem is often referred to as pulses. So, as I've been saying, when a ridge and a plume meet can lead to some pretty interesting things. And we will talk about Iceland, but I just wanted to remind you that the domain also continues offshore. And it's this elevated oceanic plateau, often referred to as the Greenland-Iceland-Faroe Ridge, because it sort of connects these domains. And this exists because the magmatic output, partially thank you to the plume, the output exceeds the spreading rate. So without the plume, this part of the North Atlantic would probably look very similar to what we see to the south and to the north. But nonetheless, it exists, and there's about 2 kilometers of dynamic support that the plume is thought to give. And as you can imagine, it has a number of important implications, not least leading to Iceland being above sea level, but also to paleo climate and paleoceanography patterns. And on that note, I wanted to show you some work from a colleague who recently published a paleobathymetry and paleotopography analysis of the area. So as sea level changes and as the plume and really area goes under uplift and subsidence, this affects things. So this is at present day, or near to 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 million years ago. So I'll just go forward in time for you. Oops. 30, 20, 10, and 0. Okay, so I think my 10 minutes is up, but this is just to say it is a very complex and unique setting. We've got tectonic plates and mantle convection, and very simply just the North Atlantic mid-ocean ridge and the Iceland plume are the 2 main contenders contributing to that. And it has a very dynamic history at present day, of course, sort of back to 15 million years ago if we're looking at onshore Iceland, or even 60 and even older for the whole domain. So thank you very much for your attention.